than what is needed to achieve the authorities' own development goals. And that then comes to your question, what can be done to boost growth so the development goals can actually be achieved. And we focus on three things. First, private investment weakness. Second, strengthening the openness of the region to the rest of the world. And third, the energy transition. So take, for example, private investment weakness. And Nepal is not the only country. There are many countries in Latin America, countries in Eastern Europe that struggle with this phenomenon of remittances, large remittance inflows. And they are both a symptom and a cause of this a lack of economic dynamism. When people go abroad, skilled, there's a large number of skilled people in a surplus, and they go abroad because they cannot find jobs here. They cannot find productive, high-paying jobs here. They go abroad because of this lack of private investment and lack of growth and lack of job creation.
Dr. Franziska, it seems that including Nepal, most of the South Asian countries are heavily depending their economy on remittance from the overseas worker. How can World Bank facilitate support to decrease this dependency, Dr. Franziska?
And Nepal is not the only country. There are many countries in Latin America, countries in Eastern Europe that struggle with this phenomenon of remittances, large remittance inflows. And they are both a symptom and a cause of this a lack of economic dynamism. When people go abroad, skilled, there's a large number of skilled people in a surplus, and they go abroad because they cannot find jobs here. They cannot find productive, high-paying jobs here. They go abroad because of this lack of private investment and lack of growth and lack of job creation. And those remittances feed into consumption growth instead of investment growth, or they feed into real estate investment instead of the productive type of investment. So this is really a challenge faced by a lot of countries, and the solution has to be to boost economic dynamism.
बैंकिङ सेरोफेरोका साथमा
नेपाल बैंक लिमिटेड, नेपालको पहिलो बैंक, पाइनियर बैंक विथ कम्प्लिट बैंकिङ सोल्युसन।
सन्तानको विश्वास आमा, आमाको विश्वास गरिमा, गरिमा विकास बैंक, एक्सेस टु ऑल।
सबैको सुरक्षा एनएलजी को इच्छा, एनएलजी इन्स्योरेन्स कम्पनी लिमिटेड।
Namaste and welcome to the program Banking Serophero, presentation of Banking and Financial Solutions Private Limited, Kathmandu, Nepal. Today we are going to present you the Chief Economist of World Bank for the South Asia region, Dr. Franziska Ohnsorge. Let's welcome Dr. Franziska on our program Banking Serophero. Hello, Dr. Franziska. Welcome to the program Banking Serophero.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are so very happy to have you in our program Banking Serophero. Thank you so very much for your valuable time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Franziska, what do you think? What are the key challenges in South Asian countries for achieving the sustainable economic development in this area, and how can World Bank see these challenges and how they are addressing the challenges, Dr. Franziska?
Thank you. That's a very good question, because on the surface the region looks good. Growth is faster than in any other developing country region. The problem is it's less than it used to be before the pandemic, and it's less, in some countries much less, than what is needed to achieve the authorities' own development goals. And that then comes to your question, what can be done to boost growth so the development goals can actually be achieved. And we focus on three things. First, private investment weakness. Second, strengthening the openness of the region to the rest of the world. And third, the energy transition. So take, for example, private investment weakness. Every country in South Asia, including Nepal, has had a slowdown, has faced a slowdown in private investment growth since the pandemic. So there is something lacking in the economic dynamism. And it takes a whole set of reforms to encourage private investment. There is really no silver bullet. Finance is not enough. Open borders is not enough. It needs everything to be right to really stimulate private investment. A large skilled labor force that seems to be emigrating is not enough. It needs everything to come together to generate this dynamism that then encourages, incentivizes private investment. Now, one of the obstacles is the fact that this region is, more than other regions, fairly closed. Trade costs in this region are on average 140%. So an internationally traded good is subject to a tariff equivalent of about 140%. Not because of tariffs themselves, because of all the logistics and the travel costs, the shipping, etc. That compares to about 120% in other countries and 100% globally. So the region is, trade is just difficult in the region, and there have been a lot of export restrictions, import restrictions, capital account restrictions. There are a lot of restrictions. It's difficult to generate investment with this kind of restrictions. The third element is the energy transition. To us, this is a matter of productivity. Because this region has the second lowest productivity growth of any emerging market and developing region. And the energy transition is an opportunity to boost productivity, because the cheapest energy is the one you don't use. So there are technologies available to reduce the use of energy. For example, in South Asia uses twice as much energy to produce 1 unit of output than the global average. So private investment that can implement some of these energy efficient technologies would also boost productivity. It's a big agenda.
Dr. Franziska, it seems that including Nepal, most of the South Asian countries are heavily depending their economy on remittance from the overseas worker. How can World Bank facilitate support to decrease this dependency, Dr. Franziska?
Remittances are large here, and Nepal is not the only country. There are many countries in Latin America, countries in Eastern Europe that struggle with this phenomenon of remittances, large remittance inflows, and they are both a symptom and a cause of this a lack of economic dynamism. When people go abroad, there's a large number of skilled people in a surplus, and they go abroad because they cannot find jobs here. They cannot find productive, high-paying jobs here. They go abroad because of this lack of private investment and lack of growth and lack of job creation. And then they send the remittances back, and those remittances feed into consumption growth instead of investment growth, or they feed into real estate investment instead of the productive type of investment. So this is really a challenge faced by a lot of countries, and the solution has to be to boost economic dynamism. So we're back to where we started, private investment growth.
Private investment growth should be prioritized.
Yes, it's really important. It's the foundation of long-term growth.
Dr. Franziska, it seems that commodity market price is increasing globally, and it seems South Asian countries are hit further. In this regard, what do you suggest? How can Nepal and other South Asian countries can cope with these difficulties?
No, that's exactly a problem for pretty much all the countries in the region. They're all commodity importers. Two types, food and energy. In that sense, I mean, food, I don't have much to add, that's just the way it is. But energy imports, there is actually something that the region can do, which is again to reduce energy intensity, to improve energy efficiency. And for Nepal specifically, there is a fantastic opportunity. Yes, there are the energy savings from more energy efficiency, but Nepal actually is one of the few countries in the world that has this large reservoir of hydropower. If you could replace these monthly energy imports with the locally produced hydropower, you would reduce your reliance for the balance of payment also, the balance of payment vulnerabilities, the reliance on energy imports. So that's really an opportunity for Nepal more than for most other countries.
Okay.
but takes investment. Takes a lot of investment.
Yeah.
Government doesn't have much space, so it takes a lot of private investment.
Definitely. Dr. Franziska, how can Nepal and other South Asian countries can attract FDI? Can you suggest some models so that we can work on that?
Yeah, FDI, foreign direct investment, is critical in many countries because it has brought new technologies, new management practice, it has brought productivity gains.
Yes.
That is fairly well established around the world now.
Exactly.
That if foreign direct investment brings productivity gains, it brings good jobs, and it boosts, it stimulates growth around it. In this region, two challenges to this. One is global, one is local. The global challenge is that generally a lot of FDI comes with trade, but the global trade environment is deteriorating. Global trade growth is slowing, just like global GDP growth is slowing. So it's more difficult to attract FDI. But there's also a local reason that foreign direct investors like predictability.
Yeah.
They invest today, their return is 10 years from now. They like predictability. And it doesn't help predictability if restrictions are imposed the minute there is stress somewhere in the system. So it does actually help attract FDI if the authorities refrain from imposing export restrictions, import restrictions, capital controls on inflows, outflows, foreign currency restrictions. That is the kind of thing that introduces policy uncertainty and threatens long-term returns to any investor, including foreign investor.
And Dr. Franziska, as you are the chief economist for World Bank of South Asia region, you might have gone through the case of Sri Lanka. In fact, I'm sure that you have gone through it thoroughly, although they are in revival phase. What do you think, what are the major reasons behind the Sri Lankan economic crisis, and what should we learn as a neighbor country? What should we learn from that economic crisis of Sri Lanka, Dr. Franziska?
Yeah, so Sri Lanka is now rated by the rating agencies also as in or near default, together with 8 other countries.
Okay.
And that is the highest number of countries that is rated in or near default in 2 decades. We're now back to the bad 1990s, 1980s, where a whole series of countries are going into default. And in some ways, it's no surprise. This is, since 1970, this is the kind of time when defaults happened. They happened when the US Federal Reserve was around the peak of its tightening cycle, so when global interest rates were high, and they happened in countries with high debt. And that's the catch. There's not much countries can do about foreign borrowing costs, but they can do a lot about their government debt, and that is probably the lesson from Sri Lanka, but also all the other countries who are in debt distress. High debt levels may appear sustainable in good times, and then there's a shock. Global interest rates go up, there's a recession, something bad happens, there's a commodity prices surge. Suddenly the debt that seemed sustainable at the time is no longer sustainable, and there's a debt problem. And once you have a debt problem, a debt overhang, a government debt overhang especially, it's very difficult to resolve. 1/3 of debt defaults, more than 1/3, never achieve what they're meant to do. They don't improve debt positions.
Okay.
5 years later, debt is higher, not lower, than at the time of default. Borrowing costs are higher, not lower, than at the time of default. So once the debt is that high, it becomes very, very difficult to resolve. So the lesson for countries like Nepal, which actually has a moderate debt level, is to never get to high debt levels.
Okay.
There is really no good remedy, not painful remedy to high debt. So really the lesson has to be to just not get to that point.
Okay.
And Nepal still has the opportunity.
Okay. As a chief economist for World Bank for South Asia region, what do you suggest? How can South Asian countries can incorporate and integrate for the betterment of financial services and sustainable economic growth?
Yeah, and this is very important as regional collaboration in 2 areas especially. These airsheds that sweep one country's pollution across the Indo-Gangetic plains to the other countries. So there is a lot of need to collaborate, because one country, if Nepal tries to fix its air pollution, it's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
So it really is important to manage these airsheds together. And it's the same with watersheds. There are a lot of rivers that come from the Himalayas and then go all the way across the continent, the subcontinent. And again, there is room for collaboration. Now, for a country like Nepal, because it's so reliant on its large neighbor, it does actually need a lot of collaboration also with its neighbors, its trading partners. For any small countries tend to be open to trade. They rely on trade. They can't do without trade. They can't do without foreign investment. It's very important to have good relationships with all the neighbors all around to really foster this regional integration. Transport corridors, good relations with governments, good relations with people.
Okay.
Just integrating the economies.
Dr. Franziska, as you are the chief economist for the World Bank South Asia region, and you have the vast experience in this financial sector as well. What are the impact of Ukraine-Russia war in the world economy, and there are any strategy that World Bank is taking to mitigate this difficulty challenge in the future and this time also?
Yeah, this is one of the shocks, no, that war.
Yeah.
And it had short-term impacts that dissipated fairly quickly, and then it has a longer-term impact. The short-term impact that really happened last summer was on commodity prices. Food prices soared, some food prices, wheat, not rice, and energy prices soared. But those unwound fairly quickly. So within 3-4 months, that food price surge had unwound. Within 6-7 months, the energy price, the oil price surge had unwound, because people realized that these trades were still continuing, and there were various initiatives also to make sure that commodities still flow around the world and the global economy adjusts. And it's actually quite remarkable how trade flows have adjusted in these things. This is the beauty of a market-based, open trade regime. There's a shock in one place, but flows adjust. And in the end, nothing is as bad as it seemed at the time. These shocks unwound. That is actually one of the beauties of this open trade regime. Now, the more insidious, longer-term effect is, of course, on global trade, global value chains. And those are beginning. That was beginning even before that war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But it's kind of exacerbated it. Now there's much more reshuffling and rethinking and broader reallocation of supply chains, which is a bit disruptive, but is an opportunity for some countries who can leverage it. Countries that have the skills, that have the transport links, that have the digital infrastructure, that have the good institutions, that make business thrive and don't keep clamping down on business. Those countries can leverage the reallocation of global supply chains. So it's an opportunity, it's a very short window of opportunity, a few years where these supply chains will reallocate. This is the time policymakers should seize and really invite in these global supply chains, i.e. foreign direct investment, coming back to your question.
At last, do you have anything to say to the viewers who are watching this program, Dr. Franziska?
It's a pleasure to be here. Nepal is a very interesting country because it has the one thing that many other countries don't have. It has the natural resources and the potentially cheap energy, if it can be exploited, that can be the foundation for very rapid growth with the right policies.
Okay. Thank you so very much for your valuable time once again. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Dear viewers, as our interaction concludes with the Chief Economist of World Bank for the South Asia region, Dr. Franziska Ohnsorge, we have come to the end of the program. Until we meet next time, give us a leave. Have a wonderful and productive time ahead. Thank you. Namaste.
बैंकिङ सेरोफेरोका साथमा
नेपाल बैंक लिमिटेड, नेपालको पहिलो बैंक, पाइनियर बैंक विथ कम्प्लिट बैंकिङ सोल्युसन।
सन्तानको विश्वास आमा, आमाको विश्वास गरिमा, गरिमा विकास बैंक, एक्सेस टु अल।
सबैको सुरक्षा एनएलजी को इच्छा। एनएलजी इन्स्योरेन्स कम्पनी लिमिटेड।